have habits. We have things that become ingrained in us. If we look at this, something that has become nearly or completely involuntary. It's just automatic. Some people would call it hardwired. Things we do naturally, right? Doing something else is the opposite of that. So what if our habits, our patterns, what's ingrained in us, right, is not what we need? So here are 4 ingredients that pretty much are required to gain new skills. You've got to have that practice we talked about. It's very helpful if you're following a starter routine, something that you can hold on to as you're going along. Very much like you'd hold on to a strap in a train or a subway car to steady you as you're going through the learning. You also need coaching, corrective feedback. You can see the picture in the middle, little adjustments. No, you need to make sure you keep your head over the ball, that type of stuff for golf. And then also important in this is that you get a sense of, I'm getting better at this. We talked about those routines, those patterns, starter routines. Well, that can be summarized for martial arts in 4 words. Wax on, wax off.
Wax off. Wax on, wax off. Hey, wax on, hot. Wax off. Hot. Concentrate. Look at my eye. Lock a hand. Thumb inside. Wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Wax on. Wax off.
From that, he was following a pattern, a series of moves eventually, went from just the small 2-move patterns to more interconnected pattern. And that is something that would be considered a kata. So in Japanese martial arts, that would be considered a kata. In Chinese martial arts, that would be called a form. Kata are practice routines that you can follow while you're learning a skill. And you see the word at the top is actually showing an indication of that with the footprints, showing how we should be doing it. If we look to businesses and how this applies to businesses, we talked about skills and what if the skills that you have or what are the habits that you have aren't what you need. Well, really, when you look at it, here are 2 main meta skills that businesses need. They need the skill to be able to manage to existing standards of performance. This is how should it be running? You've established a standard. What's my expectation? Am I meeting expectation? If not, why not? And then trying to manage to that standard. And businesses also need the ability to improve. Because if you do not improve, you are falling behind. And that improvement, that skill needs to be focused, and it needs to be continuous. And when I say focused, that means it has to be focused on what matters. Not what can be improved, but what needs to be improved. And continuous, it has to happen on a regular basis. So think of this back to the video about brain science. Has anybody here ever done a 3-day Kaizen event, a rapid improvement event? A couple people, right? That's one common way to improve, right? You get a team together, you do something for a small period of time. From a brain science standpoint, what is that? Is it practicing continuous improvement? The other 27 days of the month, what you were practicing was not doing continuous improvement. From a brain science standpoint, which do you think is going to win? It's the habit of not continuously improving. So let's talk about kata for continuous improvement. Really what we need is we need our daily routines to include improvement. They don't typically do that. It's got to be improvement that's scientifically driven because that's not a skill set we're naturally good at, so it's a skill we need to learn. The good news is that we can learn this systematic scientific improvement by following these patterns that we're talking about. The deliberate practice of improvement routines. If only somebody had figured out what that pattern was, we could all go ahead and do it, right? Well, fortunately for us, there's this gentleman named Mike Rother. He is an awesome human being. Mike is a researcher. He's at University of Michigan, studied Toyota, went into their plants for 6 years doing research. And out of that, he has arrived at a couple of books. Toyota Kata came out in 2009-ish. Toyota Kata Culture actually came out this spring. And then there's another one that's just come out that's a practice guide. This man has provided a pattern, a path forward for us to really understand how to improve and to operationalize it. Mike came up with this Improvement Kata model, right? So he's a researcher. He came up with a model for how to improve. And what he found was that there was a common pattern of how Toyota managers interacted with the people that they were mentoring that helped them grow this capability and continuous improvement. And he called that the Improvement Kata model. Here is the model. At the beginning of the model, we've got get the direction or challenge. That's the first thing. You have to know where you're going. Covey might say, begin with the end in mind, right? You have to know where you're going. What's this a challenge? And this challenge is typically set by the organization. It's where does the organization need to be? Then you have to grasp the current condition. So the second part of the model is understanding where you are. And when we grasp the current condition, it gets a better idea of the gap between where we are and where we need to be. And that allows us to then identify in the third step a target condition that is part of the way towards the challenge, right? But the challenge is difficult and we don't know how to get there. The target condition would be a different way of operating, a different pattern of operating. Different from today. You don't necessarily know how to get to the target condition, but it's close enough that you can maybe understand that you might be able to get that or see that you could do that. You don't know how, but you know that if you get there, you would be along your way. So the target conditions need to be aligned to the challenge. Then what you're going to do in step 4 is you're going to conduct experiments to get there. And you see that the line in between 2 and 3 is not a straight line because it's experimenting, right? Experiments are not always going to turn out the way that you thought. The challenge is something that's out there way in the future. The target condition could be somewhere you want to be in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, 3 months, maybe the max that you'd go out there. That's a place where you need to be, okay? So if you look at it from a back to the future standpoint, you're going to get in the DeLorean, jump forward 30 days, open the gull wing door, look out. What would you see? How would you see the pattern of operating? What metrics, process metrics, and outcome metrics would you be able to measure? It's a place you're getting to. It's not how you're getting there. The PDCA cycles, or Plan, Do, Check, Act, we'll talk about that. The experiments are how you get there. And you're going to get there by removing obstacles. You're going to identify obstacles between you and the target condition, and then you're going to experiment to try and remove those obstacles. So that's the model that Mike came up with. To go along with that Improvement Kata model, there's also a Coaching Kata. And this is how you would coach a learner through that, right? So the coaching does 2 things. 1, it gets the learner through it. And 2, it helps develop capability. So these are really routines put together through practice, develop the scientific thinking mindset. The coach then would have a pocket card that would have these 5 questions. So their kata, they're going to use this card to help follow their kata, their pattern for helping coach. So every time the learner and coach get together at the board, they're going to have this conversation. So remind me again, what was the target condition? When do we need to achieve that by? How does that connect to the challenge? Oh, we make sure we're aligned. Good. So what's the actual condition now? Where are we? Show me on the board. Can we go and see out in the Gemba, in the real world, where it happens? Then, let's say this is the first time through. The coach may be guiding the learner. What obstacles are between you and the target condition? Which one do you want to address first? And we're going to pick one. In this, there are different forms of experimentation. We're going to do 1 factor at a time experiments. After identifying the obstacle, and you're saying, which one do you want to work on now? You're going to identify that first experiment. After we identify the next step and what we expect to happen, then the coach is going to prompt them and say, how quickly can we go and see what we have learned from the last step? And notice it says what we have learned, to your point, right? It's what we together have learned because the coach doesn't have all the answers. And the prompt there is how quickly. So in this case, we're looking at our watch. We're not looking at the calendar. I can't tell you how many times I said, how quickly can we go and see what we have learned? And the automatic response is, oh, that'll be about a week. How about this afternoon? How can we make that happen this afternoon? After they've learned, the first time they're going to repeat this cycle. You're going to get back together at the storyboard. Storyboard's going to be updated. Target condition may be the same. What's the actual condition now? That's probably changed. We're going to reflect on the last experiment. What did you plan as your last step? What did you expect to happen? What actually happened? And the most important question, what did you learn from that? So these are aids to help us with the starter kata. In the real world, it would look something like this, a little bit messy. We've got some target conditions, things scribbled over here. That's tack times, whips, defects over here. We have current condition analysis, some bar charts down here, some run charts down here. These are all keeping track of the current condition, which helps you identify what your obstacles are. And then the PDCA cycles record is over here. Mike Rother, I consider him like the Bruce Lee of continuous improvement, right? If you have a conversation with Mike about kata, he's very careful to make sure that it's not just kata, these are starter kata. This is where you begin, but the expectation is you will evolve it over time to be what your organization needs.